characters, toss of a coin decides the outcome. I mean, I've got a random dice roller on my phone. I mean, technically, I'm currently watching Twitch on it, but a post-dystopian city playground of a megalomaniacal governor. That kind of works. That kind of works. But for me, what we've got to bear in mind is, in a historical scale, that's like a period, I feel. That's like an element within the world. But I think that does have a certain... I do like post-dystopian, post-apocalyptic kind of thing. I like if we could have an apocalyptic period. Maybe it's like a rise and fall. We have a previous civilization that falls, and then we have an apocalyptic age, like a dark age of an apocalypse, which then leads to a secondary civilization rising. That has a certain thing, like the arc of civilizations, except instead of having it rise and fall, we have a fall and rise. There's an interesting option. There's an interesting choice. The fall and rise of humanity. Is it a human world? That's another question we need to think about. That's another question. Maybe we should start bringing up the palette here. Let me head over to the correct screen and see if this actually works out. Do say if you think this is getting tedious, by the way. Do pipe in. Isn't this a lovely colour? Doesn't this look fantastic? I need to move away from the table a bit so I can actually get my mouse pointer into work. Right, so let's write something here first. So this is going to be our... Oh dear. Oh, I am not used to this. Palette. Have I spelled that correctly? Palette? Maybe I have, maybe I haven't. But we'll stick with this for now. This is our palette. Yeses and nos. Now, I'm going to say... Time to use the mouse, I feel. For some reason, the tablet doesn't want to do that. I'm feeling in the yes and no columns, we need to make some distinctions. Good stuff. I need to get the chat back on the screen as well, because I've covered it in post-it notes. Not the most optimal positioning for reading. Maybe the Cataclysm led way to the rise of a more mythical species. Okay, I'm thinking... Now, okay. Here's my first no column, okay? No traditional fantasy races. I'm thinking maybe we say yes to monsters and creatures, but I don't want any elves or dwarves or that kind of thing. So I'm going to say no traditional fantasy races. No. Oh my god, check out my terrible handwriting being made even worse. Traditional fantasy races. There we go. Let's put an actual E in there. Oh, that looks really good, doesn't it? Let's just scribble that out and type it in properly. Races. There we go. That's not typing. That's writing. But you get the idea. You know what I'm talking about. So no traditional fantasy race. This is looking really scrubby, isn't it? Incredibly scrubby, but it's okay. It's okay. So I'm thinking maybe we're going to end up with more sort of maybe an insectoid race could rise after the Cataclysm, but this is all for later. We're thinking about broad palette strokes. Is there anything anybody really does want to see appear in this mythology, this history? Anything you want to totally ban? Because the no traditional fantasy races does not put many limitations on us. It has to be said. What I'm thinking there is I'm trying to keep it steered away from any kind of too shadow runny flavour. I don't want to sort of go down the cyberpunk elf rabbit hole. Much as Shadowrun as a setting has its appeal and it has charms, I'm not sure I want to really delve into going too close to that arena. I think it's a thing unto itself enough that if you start going in that direction, its gravity sucks you in, and you start thinking, oh yes, fantasy creatures in a modern/futuristic setting. Dragon people, now that's interesting. We could go... I'm going to put in the yes column, I'm going to say yes to dragons as a thematic element. Now, this all does not have to be included. We can leave this behind. Dragons. There we go. My crappy handwriting. Of course, we're going to have to... If anyone does wander in off the street, the metaphorical street, we're going to have to explain what's going on, because this is very crude, isn't it? It's very crude. I'm going to have to come up with something a bit more if I manage to sustain this. It's nice to be playing something a little different from your old traditional computer game, though, I have to say. It feels a bit freeing, although this may get bogged down fairly quickly. But we'll see how it goes. So we're looking at dragons. We're looking at no traditional fantasy races. That's good. That's good. Do we want to keep this as... Do we want to say no to a lot of fantasy tropes? Do we want to put this more in a modern / non-magical arena? I mean, dragons doesn't necessarily mean magic, does it? I mean, you could also very much have your... what's that film? With Patrick Bateman from the movie in... Oh, crikey, what's his name? He played Batman, for fuck's sake. The film with the dragons, obviously, is the one I'm getting at. It has a more sort of, not, I say realistic in the loosest possible terms, but it's not a magical, fantastical creature. It's a living, breathing, fiery lizard kind of thing. That's the thing. Christian Bale, that's the guy. That's the guy. No, 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 no. What the fuck are you doing, man? Him. You know the one. The one who looked really skinny in The Machinist. I mean, you cannot fault his commitment to a role. I mean, why not? Hey, why not? We should have some music on in the background, really, shouldn't we? Some kind of musical bed, because this is a very sparse audio environment. Do I sound okay, or is it all just a bit too boomy and echoey? Let's put something on in the background that might keep us going. I mean, I could always put down the Chinese restaurant music, but I feel that may steer us in certain directions. It may bring us sort of a Legend of the Seven Kingdoms type of element. Do I go for... I don't know what any of these are. I haven't really paid enough attention. Some of them have way too much samplage in them. Let's try Hip Hop Beat 2. What does it sound like? This'll do. This is a nice thing to have in the background for now. Hopefully, unless they start singing. That could be a problem. I thought I heard an intake of breath there, but we'll see how it works out. Okay, back to chat. So, we're saying yes to dragons, but no to traditional fantasy races. I'm thinking... we're not going to take this to a modern technological level. Or are we? What causes... Yes, we are going to say yes to apocalypse as well. We want to see an apocalyptic period at least. So I'm putting apocalypse, the concept, not the character, into the yes column. So we can have apocalypse. Maybe multiple apocalypses? Floating head overlords. Now that's not impossible. Floating heads as a concept, obviously, for the stream, it has a certain thematic resonance, but then again, what are we going for here? Because for some reason, when you say floating head, I envision sci-fi, or at the very least, a sort of non-medieval fantasy. I imagine, because now I'm thinking about the Terry Gilliam film with the Don Quixote story. Baron Munchausen, not Don Quixote. Yeah, I'm thinking of Baron Munchausen when you say floating heads, but of course, that doesn't mean necessarily. So we've got dragons and apocalypse. Anything else in the no column? What do we not like? You know, I'm going to say no magic. I'm going to say this is not a magical world. Let's put magic in the no column. We're not having any magic or traditional fantasy races. You're going to have to put an A in there, scoundrel. Oh, look at that spectacular handwriting. No magic. Let's draw a little wizard hat here, just to hammer it home that we're not interested in magic. There's a little wizard hat with a star on it. There we go, and we'll just put a big circle around that and a line through it. No wizards, witches, warlocks, or other spell casting types. No magic. So it's all going to be science. But then again, as a famous author once said, any sufficiently advanced technology would appear to magic as those who don't have the capacity or capability to understand it. So is that Ray Bradbury, Arthur C. Clarke, someone along those lines? It's probably Arthur C. Clarke. He was one for the prescient quip, wasn't he? I think I just made a word up. Okay, so we've gone for no traditional fancy. Well, let's face it, I'm being kind of heavy here. Traditional fancy races, no magic. We do want dragons in there because dragons are nice, and also dragons have a certain. They lend themselves to an apocalyptic setting. You know, maybe they're the only creatures that can survive after an apocalypse in that kind of environment, or indeed maybe they are the very cause of the apocalypse. So yes, dragons, yes, apocalypse, no traditional fantasy races, no magic. I'm thinking advanced dragon civilization. Yeah, okay. So we're talking. So let's go. Let's put it broader than that. We'll keep dragons and apocalypse and advanced civilization. Now this, as it's a thematic thing, it can mean a lot at the moment. It's open to interpretation. So that could be anything sort of from. Oh, this is awful. Oh my god. So this could be anything from, you know, like a complicated but primitive society. So we could be talking cavemen who have advanced socially and have lots of networks, you know, and have a technological understanding of their primitive environment that allows complex things to emerge. You know, agriculture could be considered relatively advanced. Or we could be talking, you know, floating cities in the clouds, you know, inexplicable energy sources, that kind of carry on. That's also a potential one. Leftovers of a technological society but banned because of apocalyptian law. That's interesting. That has a certain Warhammer 40k resonance with it. So, because of course no one really understands, apart from the Adeptus Mechanicus, where any of that technology comes from, does it? So that's this is the setup. So the setup is you do this palette of things you do and don't want, and then you move on to the next stage, which is the bookends. So we need to think where we're starting and where we're finishing. I think we've already covered that kind of in the idea of this apocalyptic dip. So we start with a civilization. Civilization A is there at the dawn of this history, and at the end of the history we have the ascendancy of civilization B, and then we have this period of decline and this period of rise from the ashes, and whatever caused this to investigate as we flesh the world out. Because the idea is never that we create something and then move on to the next time segment. The idea is that any two time segments are considered sort of historical periods, and you can always just stick something in the middle. You can always say, well, in between period A and period B, we have period Gamma Alpha 7, and period Gamma Alpha 7 is the perfect explanation of why these two things happened one after the other. You know, so you can always, even if a character dies, a person is created, or a civilization falls or something, it's never gone, because you can go back and investigate elements of it in prior parts of the history. So I don't know how exciting that sounds to you guys, but I'm very interested in it. And I'll give you a link to a group of guys playing it, probably much better than me, at the end of the session as well, because I've been watching a group of people playing it, and it's been pretty funny, to be honest. It's been pretty rip-roaring, guffawing. Anyway, so once you've done this, done the bookends, you do the palette that we're doing now, and then you do a little first pass where everybody gets to put in up to two, well, not up to two things, one thing or more. So we go, I say go around the table. We don't really have a table here. We've got me in the chat. So we'll do some more spitballing, and we'll add in some historical periods and build a sort of basic outline of history. And then people take it in turn to be the lens and say that they want to make a focus of this turn round the table to be a particular element or theme of the story, and we need to tie everything we add in that round to that focus, if you see what I mean. It's easier to understand just by going through it, really. So we're looking at no traditional fantasy races, no magic. We want dragons, we want apocalypse, and we want advanced civilization. I'm thinking... You know what? As a theme, I'm actually going to put this in. Advanced civilization Genetic engineering. So this also gives us a potential hook for the apocalypse. Something could have gone wrong here. Could have been some kind of... Doesn't have to be one single factor that caused the apocalypse, of course. It could be a whole cascade failure of technology trees. Who knows? So this has a certain resonance to it. We're getting this idea of where we're heading. We haven't really thought about Civilization A and Civilization B. But I think as a palette goes, we don't really need to put much more. Unless anyone has any burning desires of things they despise, we can remove it. We cannot remove it. We can move this to one side, and oh, it doesn't shrink. Congratulations, scoundrel. You've made a mistake. Should have done this in Krita. Definitely should have done this in Krita. Can I copy paste it at all? That would be nice. No, apparently not. It's not allowed. You can't copy paste this. Why would you want to? So we'll keep our palette here, and then I will open... No, actually, the reason I used this particular thing... Keep our palette to one side. There's the palette. Now, what we need to do is create a few more of these little post-its. Ideally, not the same size. And this will form our timeline. Now, what we want to do is we want to start with our bookends. So this is the ending of the story, the final period, and the first period of our history. And I think, of course, the first period really has to be... Come on, give me the slanty arrow. I can't cope. There we go. There's the slanty arrow. Let's make this a bit bigger. Lovely. Okay, so period. So right at the top of here, period. Where's my pointy thingy? Hello? Oh, there we go. Period. I'll write these up in neat for another time. See, genetically modified people turning into dragons is something I had in my mind, actually. It was something that definitely feels right. It has a certain, like, transhumanism gets out of hand. So this period is at the beginning of time, or our history, or rather I should say, not time itself. And I'm going to call this the golden age of Civilization A, which we will need a name for. What is the civilization? What does it call itself? Golden age of... What are these civilizations? What is this original people? Who are they? What do they do? Well, I'm thinking this is interesting. Okay, instead of the sort of corporate society that we have today that's led to our technological ascendancy, let's imagine a world in which kingdoms and great houses of nobles are still a thing, and it's their patronage which has driven scientific advancement. And so we're in a sort of imagine ourselves in a sort of age of sail, the dawn of science kind of sensibility of the people, but a much more aggressive pursuit of science and the understanding of the world. And let's say that's focused more on biology. Okay, so rather than the great engineering feats of the early Victorian period, let's think instead about the discovery of things like evolution and DNA much, much earlier. Much, much earlier. Exactly, marriages for techs and stuff. So when you're looking at the domains of the people you're marrying off, you're not just looking at land and stuff. You're actually looking at things like research institutes and, you know, testing bays and I was going to say rocket launch pads, but that's not the thing. So we're going to call these people. Let's think about what's a good name for a society with an interest in the mechanics of life. They're going to have a high opinion of themselves. I'm thinking the houses of... I tell you what, let's call it the Golden Age of Nobles. That's a nice vague title which allows us to fill in a little bit of detail later on. The Golden Age of Nobles. This looks like it's written by a child. I mean, I suppose I am a 37-year-old child, but there we go. Okay, so the period that we start with is the Golden Age of Nobles. And then we're going to finish the final chapter. The final chapter is going to be another period, obviously. Come on, give me my mouse cursor. There we go. Period. Okay, it's looking slightly neater. Period. And now this is going to be where let's cleave to this dragon society, this society of dragons. We won't think about too much in detail of how it works, and whoa, don't drop the tablet, and what it is, but we'll kind of just say that this is we'll call this period the flight of the dragons. I mean, dragons can exist before this, but let's consider this a period when the dragons have now fully supplanted humanity as the actual owners of the world. So we're going to call this Flight of the Dragons, giving it a little bit of a poetic name. It doesn't need to have too much detail in it because we'll add that later. Flight of the Dragons. Although now that looks like they're running away from something. But hey, that's open. Now that's canon. That's open to interpretation. So we can see what we think about that. Okay, so we got this. So now, has anybody got any thoughts on other historical periods that they would like to stick in between here, the Golden Age of the Nobles and the Flight of the Dragons? Now, are we talking, for this apocalyptic scenario, a slow drift into an apocalyptic state, or are we talking about a sudden short sharp shock? Are we talking something like a meteor impact or a sudden plague that kills everybody, or are we talking about like a gradual decline of humanity as they kind of create new creatures to do things for them? They become slovenly and sloppy, and they basically just stop doing anything on their own and sort of not devolve, because that's not a concept, but they become stagnant and the change becomes and they just sort of peter out. There's no more humans left. Birth of the first dragonoid. Okay, I like this. I like this as a good period. Let's pop that in here. Period, birth of dragons. Call that. Let's give it a nice name. Let's call it the Great Incubation. For some reason I'm assuming eggs from dragons. The Great Let's go to a new line for that one. Great Incubation. I'm already enjoying this. I'm sorry if you guys are not enjoying this as much as I am, but this is this is a good way to while away a few hours, I reckon, this game. I reckon if I can get a group of people together to play this like in Discord, doing the whole thing and get it all set up, I think it would work quite well. I mean, this writing on the screen, it doesn't look so pretty. But it'll work for now. For the rough outline of how this works, it'll work, he says. Other historical periods. Right, well, I'm thinking there should be... There's obviously got to be a period where they figure out all of the biology that leads up to the creation of new species of humanity, maybe, or at least other servitor races, that kind of thing. So they need to have a period where they crack the code and they're able to actually understand how things work, and they have this the rise of biology period. What do we call it? The Great Biological Unmasking? The Great... It's difficult to come up with these names. It's one of the harder parts of inventing things, isn't it? Nomenclature. You don't want to sound too silly, but you don't want to sound too dull, too boring, do you? So this is a period in which the age of the microscope. This is it. And it's on point. The age of the microscope. So this is a period in which all the people start to learn about DNA and genetic engineering and things like that, and they manage to... This isn't the point where they've managed to start creating anything like a dragon, but they've started to... It's very meta. This is the point where they've started to understand things. So maybe the alteration of crops and the creation of new foods and, there's so many different things that they could possibly do. Oh my god, I've already killed about an hour doing this. That's insane. Okay. Okay. Calm down, scoundrel. Oh no, it's more like half an hour. That's okay. We're not going too crazy. So, we've got these 4 periods here. We've got the golden age of the nobles, where these houses are leading into a kind of a modern sort of level of technology around biology, or at least a sort of rudimentary understanding. It's talking Louis Pasteur age, and then we come to this period, the age of the microscope, where the knowledge develops. That's a good idea. Only one house. So let's go a little bit deeper here. Let's do the next stage of things. Let's create an event. And it goes underneath the period, the age of the microscope. We say event. Now this event is that's the best way to write the word house. House. Oh my god. No. H-O-U. I've done it again. S-E. House. What are they called? House Trinipaptus. I don't know why I've chosen that as a name, but it will work for now. Trinipaptus. House Trinipaptus reveal their new technology, reveal their new decode the human genome. House Trinipaptus decode the human genome. That's an event. So during the period of the age of the microscope, House Trinipaptus decode the human genome. It's going to be terrible. Human genome. This really is going to need someone with a better hand than me to do in the future. There we go. So, House Trinipaptus. I'm thinking, I like that. So it's Trini is what can that be? It's got to be something to do with three. The 3 Paptuses. Okay. They have a structure within their house whereby there are always 3 Papti, and they are the most learned members of the house, the Papti. And so the Trinipapti house is organised around 3 heads of household. So at any one time, you've got 3 different people who can have to confer about whether to do something or not. So there you go. That's the origin for me of House Trinipaptus. Sorry to twist what you gave me there, but I quite like it. I mean, it's not going to fit on the post-it note, but it's colour, it's flavour floating in the air for us to taste and smell and go, yes, that'll inform my next decision. So it's all controlled by one house, okay? And I think that probably continues throughout the age of the microscope. So all the other houses, although they're wealthy and powerful, they're kind of left in the dust by House Trinipaptus, who surge ahead and develop these technologies that create wonders that the world has never seen. And lots of people, while they're still coming up with crap like steel bridges and that kind of thing, these guys are way ahead. You know, they're talking about enzymes and mitochondria long before anybody else has even considered, I don't know, Ooh, I'm grasping for inventions, but they're all too old. I'm going for things like fire, wheels, and writing and agriculture. But no, we're talking about a much more advanced civilization than that. We're talking about, I don't know, what could you potentially not develop? Magnets? No electricity? There's an interesting idea. Everything's done biologically. Everything has some kind of... Yeah, so so instead of fossil fuels and the age of high power, we end up with custom bred creatures that fulfill the roles that machines would in our modern world. I kind of like that. So instead of having a car or something, you have like a perfectly engineered, like enormous, like bull-like horse creature that can run at 50 miles an hour, and then you have to have some kind of special cocooned coach to absorb all of the bouncing and thrashing around that happens. Some sort of, massive... I'm imagining a bull-like creature, but I suppose you could have other kind of forms that would be good for running. I don't think a cheetah frame would be good for pulling stuff. That's the reason I go for the bull. It's like a hippo or a rhino, or a rhino or a hippo with long, slender legs. I think I'm going too far into the weeds here, thinking about the modes of transport rather than thinking about the bigger picture. We can come back to modes of transport later on. So House Trinipaptus decode the human genome during the age of the microscope. So somewhere between the age of the microscope and the Great Incubation, something happens that destroys the houses. And now I'm thinking that House Trinipaptus has, a lot of enemies in the other households. They want to somehow usurp their power, take what they've usurp their power, take what they've got. And so we're going to need a rival house that eventually... okay, so a new period. I've come up with a new period idea. Let's take Flight of the Dragons down to the bottom here to give it the end of the timeline, then put the Great Incubation next to that, because I think that'll work, and then we'll just shrink this event just a little bit. There we go. Up here we're going to have another period, which I'm going to call that's not an E, that's an E. Period. The spreadening. Now this period, in the spreadening, all of the secrets of House Trinipaptus start to come apart. Now I'm thinking maybe there's some analogous event to the rise of the internet that takes place that precipitates the spreadening. And what happens is, instead of computing, they've engineered a type of fungus that fulfills like a similar role to a brain. It's like modern machine learning, but they build these custom frameworks of fungus tendrils and, specially seeded neurons that create a brain-like structure which can perform computing tasks when fed information. So, it's got like a big eye on a stalk that you just point at the information you want it to absorb, and I like this. So the spreadening. So invention for this period, an event, it would be the invention of the fungal network, or fungal computing. The invention of fungal computing. Paul Stamets would be so happy with me right now. I'm sure he'd be jumping for joy at just hearing the idea. Okay. Event. Now, this event, I think we should attribute to another house. Another house, because this is what, instead of, as they hope, of ascending them off into the stratosphere in a different direction to House Trinipaptus, what it actually does is it takes the secrets of House Trinipaptus and spreads them out, destroying Trinipaptan hegemony on the intellectual sphere to do with the biology, and then kind of in that sweeping change to the economy, all of their potential gains are lost as all the events. No, they lose all of it. The flies are in the mycelium. That's good. That's good. I don't know if because Paul Stamets is an interesting character to say the least. Seek out all of his stuff and learn about him. But he's also someone named after him in the Star Trek thingy that I think you're referencing there. I'm not entirely sure if you're referencing one of his videos. But yeah, the files. I thought it said flies. I misread that totally. The files are in the mycelium. Exactly. That's the kind of thing they'll be saying. That's the kind of thing they'll be saying. Sorry, I'm tired. It's 2:20 in the morning here. House, what are they called? House Zoolander. That's canon now. That's House... I know it probably wasn't what you were intending to be, but in fact, we'll call them House Zool. House Zool invent fungal computing. There we go. Is that even readable? I don't think it is. It's pretty much illegible. But there we go. Have House Zool invent fungal computing. Now, of course, this occurrence completely upends the power of the trinopaptine powers. Power of powers. And so they end up not losing everything, but being completely unable to control the technology. And I think this could be the trigger to the apocalyptic dip. Suddenly, everything that was hidden behind, sub rosa, hidden behind conspiracy and secrets for however long it lasted this period, suddenly, any guy with a kitchen and a little bit of know-how can order up the ingredients to make whatever they want. And because the trinopaptines have been hoarding this technology for so long, the law has had no reason whatsoever to catch up. So everybody's unprepared for suddenly this power to be in everybody's hands, whereas previously it's been drip-fed out to the population, carefully titrated so nobody ever gets, too much of an ability to learn how to do it themselves. Suddenly, boom, everybody's got flying children with wings and a special tumour pig with infinite bacon growing on its back. That's a bit weird, but okay. I'm looking over at the preview screen here and I am seeing hideous scribbles. God knows what the thumbnail of this looks like in the feed. People are looking at it going, uh-oh, conspiracy nutter alert. Let's skip back over here. So, where are we going now? So we've got some periods coming in. We've got the Golden Age of the Nobles, the Age of the Microscope, where the technology advances, the Spreadening, where the stranglehold of one house on that technology is lost, and then, probably skipping forward a few periods, the Great Incubation and the Flight of the Dragons. Now, okay, here we go. There is such a craze for the transhumanism and self-modification that at some period, the last original or unedited human genome is lost or destroyed somehow. And somehow the last template for where we were as a species is gone. And suddenly humanity is unanchored from its biological past and becomes, I don't know, not master of its own evolution. I suppose that would have already have happened. But in this period, people begin to forget about what humans were. Maybe here in this period, people have attained immortality, perhaps, and they start behaving less and less human, as recognisably human, and start moving towards sort of their own new mythology of themselves, creating new archetypal bodies for themselves. So like centaur, not literal actual centaurs, as an example though, they've modified themselves so much that they have become a creature that is different from a human being. And then suddenly they're all so unique that they can no longer breed in any kind of way outside of pure creation. So they can't have children in the necessary traditional sense, but they can create whatever they want to fulfill the role of the child or to propagate themselves or whatever. How does this sound? I quite like this. So we've got the Spreadening, followed by period the loss of the original genome template. Somehow, this goes on for long enough that humanity becomes completely unable to recreate itself in its original form, leading to sort of like ideas of, are we still human, that kind of thing. I kind of like this because it has some of the sort of Ghost in the Machine feel about it, but it takes it in a different kind of more Cronenberg direction. I imagine Long Live the New Flesh, stuff the tape in your chest kind of affair, rather than, Tachkoma tanks making you cry when they sacrifice themselves to stop the nuclear bomb. It's so sad, honestly. Can't hear that music now without tearing up. Oh, what a feels fest. So we've got the Golden Age of the Nobles, the Age of the Microscope, the Spreadening, the loss of the original genome template. Now I feel we're heading towards the Great Incubation. So after the loss of the original genome template, humanity fractures out and becomes just a collection of individual creatures off on their own sort of little transhumanist path. Maybe there'll be a colony of a particular template of humanity here, and an individual off there who's kind of got delusions of heading off to another world and becoming a god or something, creating his own little planet. Enter Cataclysm. This does sound like the kind of the cataclysmic period, and I like this because the human civilization doesn't get destroyed in this conception that I've got right now by an external event. It just sort of, like smoke, transforms into a different shape and then vanishes, just peters out into the air. So, eventually there'll be a world where you've got maybe a few 1,000-year-old people left who haven't ended up killing each other or leaving the world, going somewhere else on new space squid that they've engineered. A space kraken. Yeah, instead of a spaceship, you biologically engineer something to squirt you into space like some kind of huge spore gun, and hopefully your trajectory would be such that you end up where you're meant to go. Or maybe you could have some kind of engineered kraken in space, like an enormous egg is constructed, sort of like a porcelain kind of affair, filled with the biological goo required. Ooh, that's nice. Okay, so the Spreadening, I think that what you're saying that happens between the Spreadening and the loss of the original genome template, I think that comes down here, and up here we have, is this a period or an event in the Spreadening? No, I think this is a period in which the houses all start to drift apart genetically. Period. Okay. So, what do we call this one? What do we call this? Something like the fracturing, where humanity starts to fracture. So, in this period, I'm thinking, what we have are the people who are actually part of the houses, part of the nobility, part of the sort of ennobled class. They're experiencing this transhumanist thing. They're becoming new creatures, they're creating new things. But for those who don't have access to that ability, these people are remaining human. Okay, so these people aren't getting the advantages. They're not becoming this new humanity. They are still unmodified and unaided and becoming obsolete because the people in power now can create whatever servitor creature they want. And so, no need to hire average working Joe. I mean, he's only got 2 arms. He can only lift, his own body weight, maybe. I don't know. Let's go with the crazy gorilla thing that we've engineered to lift stuff. Let's do that, shall we? So this is something to do with the separation of the powerful and the powerless. but also to do with the sort of the separation of the houses into almost like Space Marine chapters, I suppose when you think about it. This is not how the game is properly played. I have now descended into just sort of pushing out periods and ideas and fleshing it out slowly. But, I mean, maybe we should take this out of D&D and put it into a creative stream or something. But I'm enjoying this. Apologies if you came here for something else, but I'm having a bit of fun now. So, this period where the houses split apart, what do we call this? I think we'll call it the fracturing. That's probably the best bet. The fracturing. Houses, let's put some brackets around this. No longer compatible to breed. Okay. Peasants obsolete. There we go. That's that kind of captures the idea of what's going on in there. So we start with the golden age of the nobles, the age of the microscope, where we begin to see the flourishing of ideas of biology. House Trinipaptus rises to power. Their power is kind of removed and dissipated by the spreadening, which is precipitated by House Zool inventing fungal computing, which allows the rapid transmission of information. Next, we have the fracturing, where the houses have modified themselves to such a degree that they can no longer breed with each other and are effectively becoming different species, and the peasantry, the regular rank and file of humanity, are no longer relevant in the sort of like any meaningful sense in the power structure. Tying together, the house that chose dragonesque traits are thriving and are noble enough to want to pull society together. Okay. So they remain, maybe they can retain a small seed of their idea of civilization, their grander image of the potential of humanity, or not even humanity anymore, but their grander image. So yeah, okay, I like that. The house that chose dragonesque traits. Well, maybe we need to come up with some houses, I think. Maybe we need to start filling this out. So House Trinipaptus and House Zool, only 2 named houses so far, but I'm imagining there's a lot of houses. I'm imagining in this global network of different noble families with this huge spiderweb network of marriages and interbreeding and inbreeding even, especially after the fracturing. So I'm thinking, do we need a new house? Do we need an event or something that describes a new house? Because I feel like this period, the fracturing, we need to kind of look into it and see what happens with these houses. Because what do House Trinipaptus do? I'm imagining House Trinipaptus are kind of creepy. They've had a head start on the whole modification thing from day one. So I think maybe of all the houses, when the houses start getting into modification of this kind, there's a kind of a trend, almost like heraldry. And these guys, rather than following the sort of house trends and stuff, they haven't developed a house trend. They've actually developed like their own internal caste system. So, like in June, you're born as a certain kind of thing. You're all, you can technically breed kind of thing, but the breeding program kind of determines who you end up with, kind of a Bene Gesserit thing. And then so you've got like maybe you've got the guys who are in charge of like the research and the science have all got like massive heads with huge brains in and massive great big thick necks to support it kind of thing, and these little bodies. And then maybe you've got people who are security members who've kind of got this huge hulking frame. And yeah, so maybe I think House Trinipaptus has the most diverse and they always maintain a slight superiority in the quality of their modifications, but they never again get their kind of control over the entire process. House Zool, obviously, I'm thinking fungus. So we're saying maximum overexposure. You're mentioning capitalist there. You were talking about a capitalist house in particular? Because I feel that we are talking Baroque cycle, like this earlier period, the golden age of nobles here. We're talking kind of analogous with our rise of capitalism in the real world. So sort of 1700s, wars between the Dutch and the English kind of period. That the rise of sort of modern reserve banking, that kind of thing. So the rise of the age of banks. Oh yes, I think some of the richest houses would have, they would be rich because they run the banks. Yeah. So Trinipaptus, maybe they've never had the need for that. Yes, okay, so I'm thinking all the houses basically operate under sort of like a capitalist reality, as it were. So the fundamental... I think what we're looking at here is, imagine a world where rather than the sort of struggles of ideologies of the 20th century, this world has had a sort of spreading of the basic state of, the East India Trading Company and all of the houses. So wherever someone has gone, this system has always kind of just been the natural thing that's been there, and they've just co-opted it and gone, So rather than having an age of colonialism, there was an age of sort of mercantilism, where they've gone round and everybody's been trading, and not everybody's got rich, but somebody everywhere has got rich. So you've got a house that's for each kind of thing. The Zool, the white hat hackers, I think that's an interesting concept, sort of a noble, or maybe almost a religious zeal. I think maybe House Zool have a sort of semi-religious reverence for some kind of fungus. Maybe there was some kind of initiation ritual or coming of age rite that involved a powerful hallucinogenic mushroom, and this is kind of how they ended up with the fungal computing idea. They were taking sort of basic tools allowed out to them by Trinipaptus, and they were investigating their beloved mushroom to find out more, and they kind of discovered the communication network, and then a way to create these networks that do the computing for them. And then over that period, I'm thinking, so they have this sort of idea that the mushrooms are, maybe they're trying to usher what we would consider in the modern era here an AI revolution, like the birth of a new consciousness. And this is a kind of almost, like bookbinding monks, that kind of thing. So they're kind of, they're not like, it's not, I'm not imagining it as like a full-on hardcore everybody's in a cult wearing a white robe kind of thing. I'm thinking it's like being a mason within the house, kind of like those who are, there's lots of fungal iconography in all of their heraldry and stuff like that, but when you actually get down to the who's propagating this sort of fungal fetishism, as it were, it's like an inner core of the household who have access to the inner rituals and the sacred mushroom preparations and stuff like that. And in one of these sort of moments, the sort of seeds, the 1+1 happened that came up with the 2 of the fungal technology. I like that. So they have a kind of, it's a white hat hacker in a way, in that they have a sort of altruistic goal, as in the creation of some new fungal intelligence, but it kind of maintains the sort of, gives it a kind of weird fanatical edge, like those who are in the center of the Zool are super into it, like really cultists, but those on the outside are sort of just the family members and stuff who they drink the special tea at a sort of gathering, a church-like gathering once a week kind of thing, and it's all just a sort of ritualistic affair with no real internal meaning. kind of like that. I like adding these sort of layers of conspiracy, possibilities in there, because of course you can always come back and change any of this over time. So we've gone a bit deep into House Zool there. So what other kind of houses? Because obviously we're going to have a house that has a draconic aspect to it, a kind of an aesthetic, and I think it should start for them as an aesthetic. It's just like maybe the fancy ladies at the house, they're getting like a nice shimmering like bit of scales on their collarbone or something, or maybe look on their like the brow or the cheekbones or something, get a nice shimmering skin tone of like pearlescent scales or something, and then it moves on to being kind of I've got dragon wings, check this out, I can fly, and then it develops through there, and the kind of they have, because I like a kind of the George R.R. Martin Game of Thrones heraldic idea where the houses have this design which has some kind of meaning about the house and contains some information. So like this house is obviously going to have draconic imagery in their heraldry. The Zool are going to have mushrooms in there. The Trinipaptus are going to have 3 figures in there at some point. We have to figure out what that looks like. See, already we're getting a little bit of meat on these bones. It's starting to take shape. There's an actual form coming out of the formlessness. I quite like it. So, the fracturing, houses no longer compatible to breed, peasant subsidy, we've got the loss of the original genome template, the great incubation. Now, I'm thinking this great incubation here, somewhere between the loss of the original genome template and the great incubation, there is this apocalyptic event, okay, and the house that has taken these draconic traits has to go into some kind of hibernation. They have to put themselves in an egg form, some kind of special egg, and they have to hide away, maybe in a bunker or buried in the ground or something. And the Great Incubation is an event where these eggs are discovered, a la Robin Hobb's Rain River Wilds series, and those eggs are hatched out by some descendant creatures. Maybe throughout all this period, we've lost the original genome template. We can't go back to having humans. Maybe there's some other sort of like creature evolves from just some random. I like the idea because in Lovecraft the Shoggoth is kind of like a servitor race of the Elder Things, and it's created and has no purpose anymore and exists outside of any kind of control. I like the idea of some creature being created to do something, and then the natural forces of time and selection then mould that into something else which becomes intelligent maybe, and then it discovers the eggs and hatches them out. I mean, that's a nice little rounded idea, isn't it? Has no sharp edges on it. Interesting. So, the loss of the original genome template, the Great Incubation, the flight of the dragons. What more can we put in? I definitely feel like I want to explore the houses more. I want to make them more fleshed out. But it's difficult because you need to think of something, an event to pin them to, something to, some reason to explore them. I mean, just conjuring houses out of thin air, out of whole cloth, is a bit random. I like the idea of having an event that features that house and then showcasing them through that. Because of course we have to, by the time of the loss of the original genome template, only these houses' descendants are left. So it feels a bit of a void in the timeline. Anywho, I've been streaming for 3.5 hours and it's 2:45 in the morning, so it's probably sensible for me to say it's time to go to bed. Certainly quite tired, close enough to human to be stable. I suppose so. You could have like a race of not perhaps some kind of uncontrollable mutagen does for the peasantry. So where the houses have been, carefully crafting their form and driving themselves towards the ideal of their group, their careless waste has left... the original genome template is lost because of corruption of the base peasantry. They're all like, we don't care about that, that's fine, they'll get along fine without us, we'll have our basic human template to look back on and return to if we wish. But then no, some kind of random mutagen comes out, and these human beings start to mutate disastrously, causing huge casualties, and only a few of them survive. And I don't mean X-Men mutations, I'm talking, more realistic mutations. But, rapid mutation, it's going to cause a lot of deaths in the short term, but those who survive will hopefully be carrying some useful little changes. Oh, damn. I wish I didn't need to go to sleep. I could sit here musing like this all night. I'm definitely weird. I mean, this could only be weirder if I'd joined it all up with bits of red string on a corkboard. Anyway, I can't keep making excuses to procrastinate about going to bed. I'll try and save this, and we'll pick it up again at another point down the line and push it a bit further, but I think it's got some potential. I mean, already you see where the bare bones of the game comes from. And when you use a bit more of the structure that the book provides, I think it really can pop. Let me find the link while I'm here to the guys I saw playing it, so you guys can have a quick peek at that, because frankly it's as funny as fuck. I mean, I don't know if you know or even like the Yogscast, but we'll have a little look and see if I can find it. Lightning Strike? No, that's that one? No, it's on Games Night. Where's Games Night? Excuse me, guys. Let's go back to the home screen for now. I'll find the link so you can see this game being played by professional content creators, people who actually, putatively at least, know what they're doing. Let me find this link. Where are ye? Avast! If I go to this channel, I should be able to find it. Subscriptions. If I look in my subscriptions, I'll definitely find it. Burp. Excuse me. Burping and saying the word burp. Practically inexcusable. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it. To be honest, this kind of thing is... I just really enjoy just doing it, thinking up the ideas and popping it all down on paper. It doesn't even have to last. We could never continue that. And I would find that has been a satisfying session, if you see what I mean. I mean, hopefully someone will enjoy it and I'll be able to do it a bit more, but we'll see. Here we go. Rise of a Civilization on Games Night. If I go to the playlist and pause it so I don't get done for any kind of... What the hell? I don't want to do your damn survey. Ah! Okay, here we go. So if I copy this, hopefully that'll give you the playlist link. Here you go. This is some guys from the Yogscast playing the same game. They every Friday, 8 o'clock PM UK time, they preview the next episode. There's currently only 4 on YouTube. A 5th has been done on the Yogscast Twitch channel, but it hasn't been published on YouTube and won't be until Monday probably. But yeah, do check that out. It's well worth a try. And should you wish to throw the creator of the game, not that you've actually seen anything to do with the game, you've just seen me sort of doing a bastardized copy of it. This is the website where you can purchase it or learn about it. So yeah, that was a sort of pseudo version of Microscope. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you didn't, do let me know, because that's an important thing for me to know, because otherwise more of that will happen. And I'm already trying to wrangle within the next week 2 friends to play a game on stream, and I'm hoping they'll agree, because they both agreed to do Call of Cthulhu. But if this is so much easier to do off the cuff. You don't have to prepare anything. I don't have to memorize the scenario. I don't have to know who the characters are. I don't have to think, do I do a voice for this guy? Do I do a funny voice, or is that too much? Do I just do my own voice? It's hard to say. It's hard to say. Anyway, maximum exposure. Thank you very much for all your input. It's been very handy. And Bergendurf, much appreciated. I hope you like where we went so far with the dragons. It wasn't a straight line from A to B. I mean, and obviously there's missing parts of it, but I feel like I like the world that is emerging there. I feel like there's a certain cohesiveness to it already, which I wasn't expecting. When I said yes to dragons, no to magic, I was thinking, how do we tie this together with an apocalyptic down and up? How does this work? But it turned out that it's actually fairly simple to start threading the pieces together to make it. I mean, that's basically using just periods and events. In the game, periods are those big chunks of time, those epochs. Events are specific things that took place, and then you have scenes which you sort of role play out. The person who proposes the scene sets a question, lays out a few characters, and people say, oh, I want to be that one, I want to be this one, and then you just sort of discuss as the characters what happens. And that's, I think that's the element of it that's closest to what you would normally think of as a role-playing game. But, it's a genius idea as far as I'm concerned. Just taking the idea of creating a history and applying that sort of game idea to it is just beautiful. Beautiful. And who knows, you could end up creating the next amazing world setting that takes the world by storm. It could be the next hot IP, although somehow I doubt it. Well, that's the thing, those kind of writing workshops, I mean, they do look like fun, but they also look like, people are taking it very seriously and you just want to have fun with it. So, it's all good. It's all good. I'm definitely going to adhere more to the game structure. I mean, that was just me spitballing and putting down ideas and kind of weaving in whatever came my way, but there's a bit more of a structure to the game. It has a turn thing, and it works. Do check those videos out that I just posted, because if you don't like them, fine, but at least give them a shake, because I really enjoyed that, and they do a lot of other good stuff as well. So they're well worth a tickle. Well worth a tickle. Is there anything else I need to say before the end? Don't forget, I am an affiliate, so you can subscribe. That's an option if you want to do that. We have an emote here, which I believe is very useful in a situation of pleading, begging, or kind of just supplication. Please help. It's that kind of a thing. There's not many of those. I see a lot of gasms. I see a lot of Kappa-esque things, but I don't see any craven grovelling out there. It's a very rare emotion seen in Twitch chat, but there it is. There you go. There's an intense amount of supplication right there. That's what, seven supplicant hands begging? No, 6. I'm adding one. My eyes are 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Yes, 6. That's how you make 6, isn't it? 2 sets of 3? Yeah, I'm fairly certain it is. I have all confidence that is the case. I'm really rambling now, aren't I? I've gone beyond the call of the ramble and entered into the ramble zone. Let me just close this down. I've made an absolute ton of bits this evening, it has to be said. Old random player was making it rain like crazy. Why don't we just add this up? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 17, 19, 20 bits, 22 bits, 23, 24. Wow. It all stacks up. It's good as well. It's quite nice. Yeah, get that free Amazon Prime sub. Those are the best subs, I think, because I don't have to worry so much. I don't go, oh, they're actually paying for this. It's a nice feeling, but it's also a kind of, oh my God, what am I? I have to produce now. I have to provide. I have to have something appear, which thankfully I've managed to do quite well so far. I say well, that is, the frequency has been maintained, if not the quality. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that this is the greatest stream in the world ever. It is the greatest Scrub League stream in the world ever. I am the watermark that divides the Scrub League from the merely subadequate. So think about that. Anyone who says, "Oh, you're not the greatest," I have to turn to them and say, so you are a lesser Scrub Leaguer? No, I can't do that. That's insane. insane. When your tax return comes in, ooh, tax returns. I didn't have much in the way of a return this year. No rebates or anything. Then again, I didn't really pay much tax. I've been out of work for 6 months, so it's probably a good thing to get back into, isn't it? Yeah, stash up some cash. I mean, I don't need to save up for a PC anymore, so we're going to be seeing a little bit more splashing on games in the old Steam library. That's for sure. Has the Easter sale started? Let me have a quick peek over here. Store. Apparently not. There's some sales going on, but it doesn't look like it's a major sale bonanza, as is usually accompanying a holiday. But there you go. There you go. Oh, dear. Well, thank you for putting up with all that and hanging around. I see we've actually maintained an audience. That's the main thing. It's not just me and you, Maximum Overexposure and Burgundy. There are others also consuming this content, so I must be doing something adequately, if not right. Anyway, it's now 5 minutes to 3 o'clock in the morning, and I had better go to bed. Thank you very much for watching. It's been a pleasure streaming for you, and hopefully I'll catch up with you next time. Bye bye.